hello, and thank you for another segment of the Urban Academics Roundtable. Tonight is going to be one awesome event. But before we get started, I'm going to give you a little housekeeping, and we need to all mute our phones. There's all kinds of noise in the background, so we all have to sort of mute our phones, and then when you want to talk, just unmute yourself. The other thing is tonight we're just going to go around, and I will say a state, and then you'll introduce yourself. And then I will give the floor over to Kay, who will introduce our speaker for tonight, who is none other than Mr. James W. Hill. He is the interim director at Drive Boston, and he is going to share with us how we could go about accessing community resources even during COVID-19 in the local area where he lives, and then maybe we can figure out how to duplicate that where we all live. So what Dr. Joyner likes to call it is cross-pollination. So I think that's a great example of what we do here at the Roundtable, which is to provide news, information, reviews that we can all use. And we want to use it, we want these roundtable meetings to be meaningful and to provide value for people who are sacrificing their time on a Thursday evening, like we all are here. So before I don't want Mr. Hills to start talking yet. So meanwhile, why don't we just go around the room and introduce ourselves? And I'm Patrina. I am the Executive Director for People Involved in Motivating Our Students Higher. We are in all the states that are represented here, except right now New York and Maryland, but those two are here too. So we'll be moving into those areas soon, I'm sure. And I'm also the founder and moderator for Urban Academics Roundtable. So next we would go is Atlanta, Georgia, and so we have someone representing Atlanta, also representing someone else. So if you could just introduce yourself, Atlanta and New Haven, Connecticut.
Good evening. This is Kay Harvey, representing Atlanta, Georgia, and New Haven, Connecticut. I am the founder and executive director of the Alexis Hill Montessori School here in New Haven, Connecticut, and working with young women in Atlanta who are entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Next up is Boston, Massachusetts.
Andre Hollywood Evans, Executive Director, Founder, and CEO of Beam TV, which is Boston's entertainment arts network television, producer of a show called Community Insight, which deals with programs and services being offered in Greater Boston, one community at a time, news that brings you above and beyond the scope. Part of the program subject matter is affordable housing, veterans programs and services, and, of course, educational development.
Up next is Phoenix, Arizona. Is Phoenix, Arizona on the call?
She was a minute ago.
Not on the call? Lady Kim?
I'm sorry. I had my mute on. Hi, this is Annette Kim Singletary, a.k.a. Lady Kim, calling and on the line from Phoenix, Arizona, originating from Boston, Massachusetts, migrating to North Carolina and then to the West Coast here in Phoenix, Arizona. I am a single mom, singer, actress, volunteer teacher. I teach acting lessons and have been involved in the PMOSH program since my daughter and I moved to North Carolina in 2007. And I am the administrative director for PMOSH, and I'm excited to be here. Thank
It
you.
is great to have everyone call tonight. So we're going to segue right now while others begin to join in to Kay Harvey, who is going to do the formal introduction for Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Trina. I want to, first of all, give praise and glory to our honorable Father who allows us each week to come together and share our information, share our wisdom. Lord, we are just so grateful to be able to be here this evening in sound mind. Lord, let us continue to be blessed and overcome with the joy that our guest this evening is going to provide to us with his information, and let us be able to use whatever is provided this evening. I am grateful to be here as the one of the moderators to introduce Mr. James Hills, who is a native of Boston. He grew up in the very communities he has spent a lifetime advocating for. He is a proud graduate of Madison Park High School. He honed his community building skills while attending the University of Massachusetts at Boston participated in several certificate programs that focused on positive youth development, civic engagement, and nonprofit leadership. In April of 2019, James graduated from the Nonprofit Management Leadership Certificate Program at the Boston University Questrom School of Business. James's professional experience includes serving at the federal, state, and local levels of government in various leadership positions. And because of his love for community, he was instrumental in the creation of Mothers for Justice and Equality and Peace Boston, both created to address violence in the city of Boston. In 2018, after the death of the son of a young woman, James affectionately called his sister, he began to advocate and convene residents and city leaders to address issues of violence and trauma under hashtag we need to know. James is a strong believer in the power of resident engagement. The belief that communities possess the ability to make change and address the social, economic, public health, and public safety concerns that disproportionately impact communities of color are the new form of classism. Aligning himself with the power of youth access and opportunities, health lifestyles, is the cornerstone of his advocacy. James joined Drive Boston team in November of 2019. And that is where he is doing, I believe, James, a lot of his work through the program Drive Boston. And we are honored and privileged to have such a young man who stays committed to the community, understands what it takes to be able to work in the community where there is disproportionate injustice, and thank you, James, for the work that you do with the families, the children in Boston, and thank you for blessing us with your presence this evening and being able to share with us some of your strategies and experiences that help move our community to levels where there is hope and where there is those successes for the families and the children. And thank you for all that you do in Boston and then sharing tonight across this country, represented on this phone this evening at the Urban Academics Roundtable. So I will hand over to you, Mr. James Hills, this evening. Thank you.
I am definitely. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Good. I am definitely honored to be on this call. I am honored to be among such the impression I've got of such Black excellence. And it is, thank you for referring to me, as a young man, but I'm pushing up close to 50, very soon. So I definitely appreciate that. Andre, thank you for this connection. And Patrina, thank you, for the invitation and allowing me to be and just simply share with you, to be quite honest, lessons learned from falling on my face, lessons learned from failing and making huge mistakes, I would say in my 20s. So I guess just give you a little background and context about me, because I believe it's important that if you're going to spend your time with someone, you know it's well worth the time that you spent. So grew up in the projects, Bromley Heath housing projects here. Mother was a crackhead. Went through my first cycle of violence as a teen, dealing with, peers being lost, speed things up a little bit. Graduated from high school. Almost didn't do that, but barely made it. And did some time at UMass and went into the youth worker field as an outreach worker, and went through my second cycle of violence as a youth worker. Speed things up a little bit, moved more into mid-level management, training, and started getting a little eye for how nonprofits work and operations, and started to get a lens into the politics that go on in nonprofit. And interestingly so, having successes in nonprofits, I got on the mayor's radar, the governor's radar, not Bush directly's radar, but I've spent time working at direct report to the mayor of Boston, served as Governor Patrick's on his anti-crime council, embedded the idea in him around the Young Citizens Council that he had when he was here for his terms, and then spent some time, interestingly so, with the Bush administration working on the African American Healthy Marriage Initiative, and we actually used hip-hop to kind of promote healthy relationships. So moved into a place of policy, and then what I call my sort of third cycle of dealing with violence. And then to speed things up to where I am now, spent some time working at Youth Build USA as an event planner, traveled the country and oversaw logistics for trainings for program directors and entities and municipalities that basically ran Youth Build programs, and got to a point where I've always been an advocate, done the work after work, have had the check producer from 9 to 5, and then I said the work is really from 5 to 9. And wound up, I landed in a space after being a part of a volunteer system for about maybe 6 years called the Drive Boston. Drive is an acronym for Dedication, Resilience, Initiative, Vision, Energy. And a young friend of mine, former convict, has an interesting history, started giving out toys. And we can talk about that later as far as resources. So that's just a little bit about me. Moved into the advocacy space, and, they call me an activist, or organizer, whatever. So now I'm going through sort of what I call my fourth cycle of violence in the context of understanding policy, understanding direct impact from being a youth worker, understanding the politics, and then that little certificate I got from BU, understanding now how nonprofits work. Now I believe God has allowed me to have these experiences with different types of intersectionality to be able to move in spaces like here tonight to talk a little bit about, accessing resources. And one of the things that I have learned is that as much as Boston is a very resource-rich, and please excuse what I call the hoodworks you may hear in the background. We can talk about that later. I don't know about your areas, but they think it's the 4th of July since like the end of March. But Boston is a very resource-rich city. In 2007, when I went to work with the mayor, had a conversation with one of the directors there, and he said that Boston alone had 3,300 nonprofits. So there are a lot of resources out there, but as much as that is true, in all of my community meetings and all my convenings and surveys and whatnot, anywhere from about 12 to 25% of the people surveyed, sort of a guesstimate, anecdotal, face-to-face meetings, people aren't aware. People don't have the information, so I think it's upon folks like us to figure out strategies, how we work with folks that have that direct on-the-ground connection. There are a lot of good people in our neighborhoods that sort of run mom and pop shops, where Aunt Josie has 6 young ladies that she's sitting with every Thursday teaching them how to crochet, where you have a young man that gets some money together and he takes his nephews and then 4 other young men on a college tour. How do we get information utilizing sort of the grassroots folks that are doing the work, folks that come into our organizations, folks that interact in our acting classes, folks that interact or come onto the shows as Dre referenced, Dre has his show, and all the other things that you all are doing. How do you make connections to sort of that aspiring leader that can get the information out? But then also, I would encourage you to be very intentional about surveying, and that's a broad statement when I say surveying, not just pen and a clipboard and a pencil, but I mean really spending time in the community. I do have to remember we're talking in the season of COVID, so how do you observe on social media? Do your different entities have Facebook pages or social media? Depending on the crowd that you're trying to engage and interact with, their age group, is social media the best way? Post-COVID, is it flyering? If there's a faith-based component, do you hit the churches during service and put flyers on their car? Getting the information out there, accessing what's available is definitely a good priority, but then how do people, leaderful like us, also use our platforms to be able to also ascertain what it really is that the community needs? I think I know. If you were to ask me right now, James, what would you do with $1 million? I would swear to you that I know for sure what it is my community needs. I have learned often that I'm wrong. Not completely, but I could be wrong anywhere up to, I would say, 30 to 50%. So if I can, if you need me to pause, if you had someone joining, I can.
And this is Kim Singletary checking in from Phoenix, and I agree with you 100% because today here in Phoenix they were speaking on the news about a gentleman, I believe he was in Ohio, that has a club, and he was opening up his club for all of the people in the area that needed during the time of this violence, with no questions asked and all that kind of stuff for him to return the stuff. And I just feel like we need to come up with innovative ways to be able to do that. And I think, and I applaud him for that innovative way to do that. And I say that with ideas like we need to go back to old school. My daughter texts me WYG. I'm like, what the heck is that? You know what I'm saying? When you have to sign the documentation, you need to spell out your whole name. We need to go back to the basics, and I don't understand why we can't just try to combine those things to where we are today in society to make them work. But, it takes, stuff like this to happen before everybody decides to, want to pull together, and it shouldn't be like that. There was a black business owner here in Phoenix during the protest here in Phoenix, and she's a black business jeweler and alteration shop, and she says now she's getting outside people coming in to help her business because they're starting to show and understand, what we've gone through all these years. But I just think it's a matter of maybe collectively, people in your position, people on the level of our position at this round table, people that are on welfare, so that they have a chance to talk and be able to, lay out how we can figure out where we can, make some changes so that it fits everybody. A woman also came on the phone before, I don't agree with this. She was saying that we should decline police funding and use that for, housing and stuff like that. I don't think we should decline it. I think we should figure out how we should spread it out amongst everybody. But that's my chance.
I would say, Kim, in response to that, it is, so that's why I had mentioned, it's important to name and be aware of what your age group is. I'm going to, I would be remiss if I would not keep it 100 with you all, with all due, and if I'm certainly not an expert in any area. I don't think I'm a novice in a few areas, but I would say to you that if you're engaging that age group, with your children, it's a little bit different, but your children can also teach you. One of the things that I have learned with my nephews is I am uncle. I do my most engagement with them when I am afraid that they are doing something wrong. When I had to get about 4 of them away from that protest here on Sunday during the riot, they were familiar with downtown, so I'm on the phone and texting, and I was going off. And I had to back up and tell them, listen, I was so concerned tonight because in all that fussing, I hope you heard that I loved you and I'm concerned for you. So I'm saying that point to say that if that, I'll just surmise it as that millennial, that Gen Z age group, I would suggest you strongly consider meeting them where they are. And they're also at that age group where the more you express what you want them to do, they're going to do the total opposite. The age of maturity that we had, theirs is a little bit delayed in this generation. So all that to say that definitely the piece about, I think you said someone opened their club and the community came in. There's a lot of that going on during this world pandemic, but how do folks like us, my consult model when I go in with clients is I do something called AIM. How do we amplify what's good and present? And this can also be applied to accessing resources, amplifying what's good and present. And then also, how do we increase or intensify what it is that we would like to do? And then at the end of all of that, maintain what it is that we can, help the club, as you said, that someone's doing in the community was coming in. Accessing resources are the regular ones that the municipalities do, but it's also those neighborhood ones that you just referred to.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to just also amplify that too, because when I grew up, I'm from Boston originally. My parents lived in Lenox Street Project. And underneath Lenox Street Project, there was a social hall. And the social hall was available for retired citizens, old people that are retired to come down there and teach young kids how to play checkers, chess, and things like that, and live and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like because of the fact that we now have all these communities and these towns and states where people live, where you have access to, say, a community that you live in, and you pay HOA fees, and you pay condo fees, and you have a computer lab, you're still being charged for that. That could be an opportunity for those individuals that live within their community, that may be senior citizens, that have the time, that may want to come in there and offer their time and volunteer time and give it back. And that's what I would like to strive for, because that makes me feel so much love, and I just love that. But when it's time to, okay, I live in this community, I got to pay for living in this community, plus I even have to pay to go use the computer. I could go to the community center when I lived in Lenox Street Project, go down there and be a computer. Well, not at that time, because I'm 60, and the child of being 60. But at the same time, they were teaching kids, like I said, chess, teaching the guys how to play basketball, that kind of stuff. And I just think that kind of stuff when I talk about bringing and mixing and collaborating the old school with the new school, because it involves everybody, being a citizen, Bolivian, pets, people that are from my era and beyond. But I said enough now, so I should give somebody else a chance. Sorry. Hello.
If no one had anything else, I would say that, I got my start in Bromley Heath Housing Projects, which is called a program called The Cave. And we didn't have computers back then, but there were dance classes. They fed us. To think about now what they fed us is so interesting. But, it is, I started out saying it's the grassroots. There's a paradigm shift going on during COVID through the protests, through, I think, how observing that 8-minute video has impacted everybody. There is a sentiment of here and no further. Enough is enough. We're tired. Whenever have we seen the entire world protest on America's behalf for a black man? When? Maybe MLK, but there's a sentiment, of here and no further. So when I say the paradigm shift is, sometimes we tend to go in top heavy, leaderful people. We know what's going on and whatnot. But again, I think accessing the resources is good, but also how do we help those that need to access the resources? How do we help them shape that they access? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I think a lot of us are disenfranchised, and I think that's why we are where we are today. We don't get our information fast enough, quick enough. And then when we do get it, it's not really the truth. It's all watered down and poked in and moved over and pushed over and under the cross already, and it's raggedy, and we just don't ever really receive the resources. We can't say that there haven't been millions and millions and millions of dollars dumped into our inner city urban schools and into our communities. We can't say that money hasn't dropped there. It just really has a problem making its way to us. So before you even respond to that, I just want to make sure I mention that we also have here today Waltham, Massachusetts. There's Brittany Matthews and Denise Latson is from Charleston, North Carolina. And then there's Renee Mosley from New York City who has joined the call. So I just want to make sure that you know that you're also here with another person from Massachusetts, Charleston, South Carolina, and New York City is also on the line. So now we're at Massachusetts, North Carolina, Georgia, Connecticut, and Charlotte. So we got 1, 2, 3. Yes, we've got a few representatives on the phone. So speak to us and help us understand what's going on.
Don't forget about Phoenix.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Phoenix was on the line. I forget. I'm sorry.
And Phoenix.
I'm sorry. Lady Kim is on this line. Yes, she is. And thank you for being here.
Welcome to the other folks that just joined. Just a quick recap. We were just talking about, access and resources. And one of the main points I was making, I believe it's Katrina that was talking about is, that sort of grassroots piece. How do we tap into what is present? There was a time I remember that we were using the term a lot, asset-based. Asset mapping. We, I think, have, in the period of Trump and everything that COVID has exposed, we have began to name and highlight the injustices and the inequities. And while that is relevant, important, and we should always do it, how do we at the same time lift up what's good in the hood? Again, going back to the theme, access and resources. I think, again, presumably, for folks like us that move in certain spaces, when you think resources, I know for me, I automatically think of the program that I can get the person into where they can get a voucher and get some food and or get therapy and trauma containment and things like that. And a lot of times, I think with the trauma therapy, it's good to stick with a clinician if they'll go. But a lot of times, back in the day, before 501c3s, before the civil rights movement, they put all that money in the nonprofits and whatnot, and people made our communities, they became pimps and poverty pimps over our communities for the dollar. Where did most of our community go to get their resources? Who was the social service agency in the black community? Who went and did the apprenticeship with the plumber? It was the church. You know what I mean? So I make that point to say there are a wealth of resources within our community, I mean that in the tangible and what it is that our community can sort of in a village model contain itself. I'll be transparent with you all. You talking to a backsliding preacher. I remember my former bishop preached once, we have what we need because it's in the house. Our village has what we need. A couple of things there, and I'll pause. It is what we need, but the thing is, I don't know about other cities, is that we have these people that are able to write good grants. They hire a grant writer, they get the grant, they have, you all may have seen a picture of me. There are people involved on the board that's lighter than me, and they want to go in and save and do good for the community, but they don't know the community. So the resources are there, but then there's a disconnect from the people that get the grants. The other piece is we have to also...
Absolutely, and the reason why is because you can't operationalize something you didn't write yourself. If you weren't sitting at the table, and Kay can speak to this, we've been up all night sometimes, piecing together grants, trying to get things together when we were at Yale. And I'm talking all night, but we were all there together. We had pieces to go into those, and so we knew what we were doing. We all had skin in the game. And now what you see is people, like you said, they hire their grant writers. And so if you hire me to write your grant, I wrote it. Then I'm gone. Who helps you operationalize what I wrote?
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. And so I see programs all the time that get major funding and don't even know how to recruit a child. Can't figure out how to get enrollment to save their lives. But they have $100,000, every 3-4 months. And they don't know what to do with it. So what do we do with wasted resources?
So it's interesting because my first gut response to you is there's no such thing as a wasted resource. I think it's a shifted resource. I think it's a shifted resource. I think also, and this is what I was going to get into a few minutes ago, we have to, I would suggest that communities and you all consider working within communities to challenge folks on two levels. Challenge the political will in your local community, and then you also have to challenge the community will. I think a lot of times that, my founder and board president, Darren Howell, talks about the ignorance of people when things are free. And I sat there and I struggled with it for a minute, and then I went to a couple of events and had to manage logistics for 4 events across the city, and going back and forth and seeing some of the behavior. I walked in and I looked at him and I got ready to open my mouth, and he said, the ignorance of people when things are free. I say that to say that we also have to support our community when there needs to be support. We have to offer our community opportunities to move on. When I say our community, individuals and families that we work with, we have to offer them opportunities to sort of move on their own. There are times that we will need to service. We call it the SOS model, service, opportunities, and support. Our community has been used to being serviced. And getting back to your point about the wasted resource, there is no voice like a combined, resounding, choir, choral, whatever you want to call it, unified voice of the people that if leaderful people like us have information, we begin to share it and we begin to make people aware, from use of social media to newsletters to calls like this to webinars. The more, there's a saying that I came up with, ignorance is bliss and awareness is stressful as, I'll just say the acronym AF, as the kids say. And the more I have found, the more that I get on Facebook and banter about the Boston politics and the Massachusetts politics, people start asking questions, you explain it, and they're like, wait, what? So getting information out like that takes what would be deemed as a wasted resource. A few things come out of it. It gives the opportunity. You talked before, someone mentioned about engaging communities or whatever, and I was trying to remember to make the point. One of the things of accessing information and allowing people to feel empowered to go after more information or anything that you're doing with your community is you want to strategically line them up for small wins. When you line them up for small wins, they get that win. There's a feeling of confidence. Yes, we did it. I went and got that information. I went and took advantage of that fuel assistance. I went and did that. Then the next time they have to go access something, still offering that balance between service and then also community will, again, to hold that agency, Patrina, accountable that is not practicing, not doing well. What you do is you send that person there for services, almost as a covert operation, and let them go through an experience. Hopefully, if it's a good experience, they come back and say, hey, they took care of me, they followed up, blah, blah, blah. If you deemed it as a wasted resource, more than likely they're going to come back with an experience that says, I went there, they weren't culturally competent, they talked down to me, I felt like I was asking for something. Here's where your community comes in, and a leaderful person or a couple of other people go in on their behalf or make a phone call and say, hey, you all assert on your website that you do X, Y, and Z. One of our clients, one of my coworkers, one of my family members came there, and this was their experience. I'd like to bring them, and let's have a conversation with you about how you operationalize, to bring it back to your point, what it is that you're saying you're doing in our community.
Many of us are aware of what happened in our communities with the empowerment zones. There was money, hundreds and millions of dollars of government funds were distributed to communities that were under distress and called empowerment zones. When you look at what has happened in Boston, New Haven, New York, the empowerment zones, what had, Mr. Hills, if you can, address some of what Boston did, and has there been any are there any existing programs from those dollars that you are aware of? Because we know that hundreds of millions of dollars were provided to communities that were to be empowered. And here we are in 2020, COVID-19. Do we feel empowered? Are we empowered? Where are we in regards to empowerment zone monies and as it reflects on 2019? If you can just give me some feedback.
So if I remember correctly, the empowerment zones came out, I want to say, in the early 90s, and at that time I was just merging from high school into youth worker, so not 100% familiar with its origin. However, I remember hearing a lot about it when I got more into the training specialist and mid-level management, and I can say assuredly right now there aren't a lot of active empowerment zone activities here in Boston, just by the fact that you haven't heard about it. I would say I've been out of direct service for some years, but still, in certain spaces, not as active here in Boston as it would be. I would also suggest this is sort of a sad, but just, the word empowerment is interesting. When you empower, you can also disempower. And we understand with different administrations, though they try to legislate it as acts in budgets, in different, if it was the early 90s, then wasn't the early 90s, was that, who was that? Was that Clinton in the early 90s? Who was president?
If I remember correctly, yeah. Clinton, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that was under the Clinton administration, and then you go into an administration, which is the Bush administration, which is Republican, which largely has sort of a belief that, you pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. So, we don't need to empower them, let them empower themselves. So funding streams and priorities often do, as you know, switch from administration to administration. I wish I could give you more information nationally about empowerment zones and specifically in Boston, but I can assuredly tell you there's not a lot of active activity. Residual, I'd have to do some research and check with some folks and get it back to Patrina and Andre. But I definitely believe there's residual impact of that of those dollars here. Did it come out of the Department of Labor? Was it labor money that came out, if I remember correctly?
I do believe it was. Trina, was it the Department of Labor?
Say that one more time, Kay.
The empowerment zone money.
Well, we know it came through.
Yeah.
And not only that, Safe Haven, you don't remember all that money? And I get it that no resources ever wasted. It just never makes it to us. It sort of gets intercepted before it makes its way to who it was intended for. And so people come into our communities all the time and they write grants all the time. And no, it doesn't go wasted, but it definitely does not go for, I won't say all of it, but a lot of it is just skimmed off the top. And we can even use COVID-19 for this example. For small businesses, there were $300 million that came down the pipe day one. Before you even heard about it, $200 million of it was already gone, already separated and shared by those at the top. And so you heard later about how people were like NASCAR and big old companies like that going after small business money. And now we learn that a small business is anyone with less than 300 employees. What? You mean to tell me if you got 300 employees, you're a small business? That's small?
Yes. Yes.
So something has to change from a place that, like we've got to get some changes happening. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but talk about it.
So I think one of the things when you say changes, one of the things I was thinking of as you were talking, a lot of these people that write for grants, the agencies typically reach out to their local elected officials for letters of support. So again, there's access and resources on an individual basis, and then there's also access and resources for folks like ourselves that want to serve the individual. So let's go to that space for a minute. So you're a 501c3, you're really doing the work, but you don't have the relationship with the local United Way, but, one person or a board member has the relationship with the person at the United Way. They sent in a grant writer pro bono and whatnot. And you're like, wait a minute. Next time you see that elected official, you grab them and let them know, hey, this is the work that I'm doing here. Can you come out? Can you see? Have a media or press kit ready for them to give to them? The point I'm trying to make is you figure out different strategies to make people aware at the grassroots level of the information and the resources available to them. But then when it comes to elected officials and those that have influence, you also help them have access to the information of what's really going on. Real quick, one of the models that I did, and I would two things I would share with you all, and we're happy to support and consult and help in other cities is, as I think Lady Kim, who introduced me, referred in my bio, when my nephew got killed, because of my relationships, I text the mayor. I was in D.C., so I'm out of town. The matriarch of the family calls and says Amin got shot, and never heard her voice like that. Never, ever in that time, 46 years, never heard her voice. Long story short, had the relationships. The mayor sat me down with the new chief of Health and Human Services, the deputy director over there, and I'm sitting there going in, cussing them out, telling them they lied to me, da-da-da-da. And something dawned on me. I said, I have the privilege of sitting here with you all. Hold on. So I text the mayor and I said, hey, I need one point person that I can work with to get all your departments that have anything to do with violence to come out and have an open town hall conversation with the community. Speed things up. How do you get those that are considered stakeholders in your community in a room at an event where the programs that say they're doing the wonderful work, the elected officials, give them an opportunity to present what it is they're doing, like a I don't know, a community getting to know session. And you have all the programs introduce themselves first. Then you just take a little break, have a little lunch or something, snacks, and tell people to mingle. Then you come back and you let these agencies and elected officials hear from the community about what their experience is. Though these agencies say they're doing wonderful, the electeds are going to get up and say they're doing this, make them stay in the room for the second half to hear from the community. All of that to say is you utilize your community voice to make the needle move. If you go on the Drive Boston page, part of our logo is sort of like that gas tank or whatever. And our goal is, of course, to go out of business. We don't want to be here always. Getting off on a tangent, I'm sorry. So utilize your community. I can share some stuff at another point about event-driven policy and also action optics. Those are two things I employ when I want to move an agenda. Action optics, event-driven policy. I'll shut up.
No, the idea is not for you to shut up. You're in the hot seat.
I saw that. Andre sent me a text that said hot seat. I said, wait a minute.
Yes, sir. You're in the hot seat. So the questions are coming towards you. And although there are lots of people around the call that are kind of quiet tonight, but I know there are instances in each of our cities where our people just don't know where the resources are. And so what we want for urban academics, online and on foot, is that we have representatives everywhere trying to get to each person to make sure they have the information and that it is accurate. We don't have all the correct information. One of the ideas that Lady Kay brought up about a week or so ago is that she thought we should come up with teams of people in each city to just go door to door, because we're finding out that in each of our cities, the ones that we already are in with where PMASH is, and that's Atlanta, Boston, Charleston, Charlotte, New Haven, Phoenix, and Maryland, that we know that there are kids missing, like with all the COVID resources that were distributed for the children and families. Here in Charlotte, 3,000 children are on.
Hello?
Hello?
I think we
Hello?
lost.
What happened?
We lost her. It looks like we lost her.
I just heard the thing go poop.
Yeah. She'll get back on.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the things that she was saying was like the EBT. Now, Massachusetts did the EBT card, what we call, I think they call it the pre-COVID card, where they took the meal amount for breakfast and lunch. And if you're in Boston Public Schools, they came up with a calculation. Are you all doing that in your different cities?
What is it? The EBT, the SNAP card?
It's basically the governor here worked out some formula that if your child is a public school student, you get a EBT card that is the equivalent of the amount the food would cost for breakfast and lunch over the summer. So they gave the parents card to sustain their children, and they called it a pre-EBT card. I was curious if they were doing that in other states.
Yes, they're doing it in New York. They are doing it here.
Oh, okay, great.
Good evening.
I think
is
Patrice maybe
Denise
that.
Calling from. This is Denise calling from Charleston, South Carolina, and unfortunately, our state, South Carolina, does not offer that benefit. They say that our governor missed the deadline to submit the application. So, South Carolina was one of the states that were not qualified or eligible to receive those benefits for the children that were attending school that got free lunch or reduced lunch. Yeah, South Carolina.
Wow.
And North Carolina's right there. North Carolina, I think, was approved, but they said that our governor
missed the deadline.
And then he said
you have
that
a Republican governor?
Huh?
Is he a Republican governor?
He is. McAllister.
Yep. So that's intentional.
I think it was really. I don't want to get all into that, but I think it was mainly like intentional. I just thought, with this pandemic and everything else, he's been really slow-footing it and going a little bit behind Trump with certain things and certain decisions that he's been making for the state. So, you've seen that plain as day, and that's why it's so important to vote. But, I saw that like he was just in suit with Trump. I mean, he wasn't more distinct of certain things and certain policies. It was distinct, to show that. But as far as, the resources that you were speaking about, or even if it was not wasted resources or so forth, the issue that we're having here in Charleston, South Carolina, and mainly more of the low country, inner city islands down in South Carolina, is that they're hobnobbing, or what I would say, not hobnobbing, but they're not directing those unused resources even in the category for youth or the school system or anything like that. If the resources are not used, they use it for nothing dealing with youth. I mean, nothing at all or anything. I'm dealing with that with the town of James Island as well right now. They have money that's in hospitality, and they're using that money towards a library. So they do have the decision, or, have the benefits, or, like I said, they can make the decision making to see where they can allocate those fundings. But they're always missing our community. They're always missing, and I guess there's not enough of us really knowing that these resources exist, so we can go to them and let them know, hey, we know it's just there. We, not necessarily demand, but this is in, black and white. It's better to show them than just speaking and whatever. So that's the issue that we have in Charleston, that they're not allocating the funding the way that they're supposed to, and we are suffering here in Charleston tremendously.
I think one of the first things that I have to go back to is what is it when you introduce yourself? What is it that you say you do in Charleston?
I am the owner and executive director for a development center that calls OC Family Development Center. I'm from James Island, which is a small island here in Charleston on the outskirts, and our community, just Charleston in the whole, we need a lot of resources. We need to be informative to inform our parents about the resources. We have a lot of, parents that just feel, okay, hey, we want a handout or something, you owe me something, or just better yet, not even taking the opportunity to let the kids know the resources here or utilize the resources. So I guess some of that is that they don't want to put any money in our communities because I think, I'm not sure, but we don't have the resources here. And I've called, sometimes I've even got calls and say, oh, that money doesn't even exist. And we know that McKinney-Vento exists, it exists every state, especially in Charleston. But you would call them, no, those fundings are not available. They choose who they want to give the community money to. Definitely our community is not getting it here in Charleston. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Charleston, to try and work on some development centers or just bringing things back to our community as far as the formative resources for our community. And it's kind of difficult because they're not acknowledging, and if they are acknowledging, they know somebody who knows somebody, and that's where the funding is going, to the same places that not consistent, that's not doing anything. It's just awful. You're just wasting money, Well, I would say wasting money, but not putting the money where
it's not getting to the ground. It's not getting to the ground. And
right.
So one thing there is I'm in Boston, and Boston is one of the most political, if you can make it in Boston in politics, you can make it anywhere. So I'm going to say a hard thing to you is You want to figure out the political climate of your area. Who are the movers and shakers that make decisions in your area? Who is a elected of color that you can join yourself with? Who is in a activist space that if they're not moving around the same issue, if you're talking about funding, let's say for youth development, who is out there kind of buck wild around youth development that you can tap into to sort of inform them of the backstory, the politics. It begins to change it unfortunately, accessing at this level, on a macro level, resources is a strategy. And it is tiresome. Let's just name that. It is frustrating. It exacerbates everything that we know we're trying to address. It exacerbates the things we know about racism. Let's talk about the good old boys club. You know, we're from different regions here. Racism and classism and genderism displays itself in different ways according to where you live. You know, so I would say for you specifically, think about delving into and getting getting an assessment of what the political climate is, as well as much as you can, if you haven't, think about it. If you have old ones, pull them together, retweet them, look at technology, and figure out how you do a needs assessment. Make it short, make it real quick. If you can incentivize it, you know, this week, everybody that does a survey is eligible for a $50 gift card. And you get the information and data and go in somebody's office and say, these are what the needs are coming from the community. Last thing I'll say to you is that piece about the handout, people come expecting and whatnot, I think that goes to what I was saying before around the ignorance of people when things are free. I'll go to the word. The poor will be with us always. And the thing is, you just love on them. You have a balance of you attempt to try to use opportunities where you can either chat with them or, you know, implore a process where we've been in the working field long enough. I don't think it's a judgment statement. I'll say it's discernment to where you may want to put in that extra buffer and say, well, can you fill this out? And actually, sometimes we have had people, we've asked them to prove the need because we see a track record. We also went to somebody else's event to support them, but we saw you there, and you're coming here for the same resource, you know. So sorry about going so long, but you're in a very interesting area there. So yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. Not that, you know, the area is unique. Charleston is very unique, and you do, you know, it's not hard, but you just really have, like you say, I have to channel into the right people, so that I can, you know, deal with the politics and make sure that I'm able to be visible. And the more that I, you know, be at that round table, you know, eventually they'll get in because they see it. You know, it's not like these things are hidden as far as what's going on with our youth and our community. You know, these things, they see it in the news, they hear about it, and they know. But we just got to have a lot of people on the ground that's consistent, and that's where I'm at right now, just trying to make sure that I can locate the right players, you know, the right movers and shakers, and gaining that relationship with them so we can, you know, bring something back to the community and, like you said, love on them, meet them halfway, and, you know, just let them know that there's consistency here. And that's where I'm at as far as the resources here in Charleston. There's a great need for everything here in Charleston. There's enough work to go around, and I'm on the ground, and that's where I'm at.
Absolutely. And I applaud you for it.
Thank you.
I guess one of the other things I would throw in, if no one has anything else,
I'm going to hold myself accountable.
Hold yourself accountable.
I know a couple times I got a couple texts saying that we're talking in the background, so please mute your phone when you're not talking. Please, please, please. It makes it easier to edit. Please. Thank you.
One of the other models I would mention, and this actually will bring out a cadre of people that you winds up being your support base. So what we do here in Boston at Drive Boston is we partner with our local Marines, and we have something that's called Toys for Tots. And I would presume that there's a infantry, in probably every city. And what we do is we partner with Toys for Tots, and we send them workers, to help sort the toys and whatnot. You get one or two people from the community that establishes themselves within Toys for Tots, and then you basically host an event where you give away toys.
No, I said I'm trying to hold myself accountable. Sometimes you got to give in. It's too early. I'm not going to post it now. But I want them to know I haven't done fried chicken in a while.
Hello? Sorry. So one of the other things, is someone asking about accountability, or I heard something in the background. I'm sorry, guys. So what we do with that model is we give away toys. We have people register, simply register, and we also give away toys that people that just show up. And what you do is you collect the information. One, you provide a resource for them that are dealing with other issues, got to pay bills and all that other stuff. And you take, you alleviate some of the toys that they have to buy, whatever. But you get their information, and that's how you begin to also make them aware. They're hooked in the fact that you help them with toys. The other piece is if you keep their information, stay in touch with them, send them a flyer of different things going on. Let's say 1,500 people show up, about maybe 800 subscribe to the email invitation you send out, and you get engagement from about 300. That's pretty decent. You know what I mean? So that's just another model of when I talked about being strategic. One, you supply a resource of the toys and engagement, which is dope. You bring the community together for a wonderful event. Two, you get all of their demographic information. Then you're able to keep in touch with them. That gives you a group to survey to find out what the needs are. And then that also, it gives you a stance in the community that wow, the traditional Thanksgiving baskets and all that other stuff. But that's just that's the We Need to Know and the Toy Drive are two models that that I can say that I could go into any city and replicate it within 6 weeks notice. So it's that's just a model too of influencing how at the macro level you can get the community involved to access resources, and then also you not use that same community, but that same community then becomes more aware of what these programs are saying they are doing. They go to utilize it. If it doesn't work, they either ship up or shape up or ship out. So.
Yeah, step up or step off. What I was going to say is if we apply that. I'm sorry, somebody's on the phone. Hello?
Oh, yeah, that was me. I was going to finish.
Hey, Denise.
Hey. How you doing?
I'm good. What I was going to say, if we could apply that same concept for education, is a huge deal right now, because it seems like everybody's talking about it and they're trying to capitalize on it. It seems like we thought it was forgotten, but it's not. And like you said about Toys for Tots, what if we did something like books for students? I mean, make learning fun, make it entertaining. If we did a drive for like school supplies, like pens, pencils, paper, stuff like that, and utilize that same concept and maybe get the right people from organizations to like donate to
to donate to it. And well, there's another, and Andre, I don't know if you remember Tony Richards up here, like Books No Ball. What you want to do in the academic space is incentivize, either a certain amount of time has to be done with homework on site, then you go play ball for an hour, or you can play video games for an hour. But the first 2 hours, it has to be homework, tutoring, some sort of STEM focus or whatever, and you incentivize it also through their report cards, doing different things like that. So also I think in the education space, like if you don't move in the ed space, who in your local area, one of the things that is going to make us successful is knowing and naming what we don't know and what we don't have, and then the ability to accept that and then go out and find those that help fill that gap. I think a lot, not to get off on a tangent. So, yes, Andre, different models like Books No Ball, incentivizing successful academics with real things that the young people are going to take advantage of, gift cards, video games, things like that. I think that is paramount. You make them successful in the academic space, a lot of the other things sort of just dissipate because they're focused on their education. The motive may be that daggone video game or gift card, but eventually that academic awareness is going to result in good things.
That is good stuff. All of it is good stuff. And I am just grateful to have you on the call tonight. And community resources is all there is. I mean, even if regardless of whether you're for-profit, nonprofit, independent, whatever it is, you need some kind of resource from your community in order to just kickstart. So I'm really grateful that you're here with us tonight answering all these hard questions for us so that we can sort of move forward. And I'm really, 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 really thrilled with the content here tonight. And so you've made it easy for me. So I just want to make sure that if anyone else has questions for you, that they get them answered now. We're already at the 10:30 mark, so I don't know who else is represented on the call who hasn't been able to ask you any questions, but I encourage you to do so now. They don't have to be questions. They can be statements, comments, information,
Well, this is Denise here in Charleston. My phone was not mute. I had it on unmute, but muted. Well, I just wanted to say I thank y'all for the call, the round table. It was very informative. I got from as far as to collect my geographic area and to also to engage in the community. I did hear the Toys for Tots, which a couple of years ago I thought about that as well. So I think that is a great opportunity to, like you said, to just get, who's in the community, to get those different geographic and things so forth. So thank you for that enlightenment on that one. And then also the Thanksgiving basket. So what I got from that is just anything that would be able to find out the location, basically the age, how many kids are in the household, and so forth, to get that, that statistic or that data, I would say. And, that's basically it. I just want to say thank y'all. Thank you for all the informative information and also, making it kind of simple and easy a little bit as far as letting us know that, just go for it and move and go to the ground and continue to, keep going. So that's what I got from this call, and thank y'all, and good night.
Thank you. It's definitely been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Is anyone there?
I'm still here.
Is that Kim?
No, this is Denise.
Hi, Denise. It's Kay. Is it just the two of us?
I don't know. I wasn't ending the call.
Hello?
Hello?
Wow. I think it's just the two of us left.
So they hung up?
I don't know.
I didn't hear.
I don't know.
Or did the call drop?
It must have dropped. It must have.
Oh. That's what
No.
I'm thinking. Everybody
Well, how are you?
I'm
Hello?
fine. How are you? Yes, ma'am. Hello?
Yep, I'm here. Well, I was going to ask, do you have any kind of coalition? No, I'm a coalition person. Is there a coalition in Charleston?
You know what? We had a it was only the only one that I knew of was a Black coalition, but they were not active. Like we have like different things, but they're just not active in the community, or they're a start and then something will happen and they don't move anymore. So I would say we have some coalitions, and for you to bring that up, I'll go and research some active ones here. Because when I first moved home, I wanted to get into, into that, I wanted to, get into that, but they were active. They would have a website, and then when you trying to contact them or, find out about involvement or enrollment or anything like that, is nothing. So I will look back while we're speaking now. Is there a specific one?
Well, because I'm thinking, hello?
It's Katrina. I could hear you and Kay. I could hear you and Denise, but you couldn't hear me. And the first person to drop off, the first person to drop off was Mr. Hills, and then Dre dropped off, so obviously Kim dropped off with him. Lene disappeared. Brittany, everybody disappeared. Monet, everybody that was on the line, I just kept hearing the boop, 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 like everybody was cut off. So maybe there was a glitch in the internet for a second. That's what I'm guessing. But I apologize for that. I really do. I'm so sorry. I can't control the technology of the world.
Right.
Because everybody's on it. Everybody's on work. We got the funeral going on. Everybody's streaming from around the world. So all we can do is say, we here, dear Lord. We are on the phone. So we lost that guy. Is they not coming back? I guess it's 10:43. We'll give them a few more minutes. We got lots of meat on this call. Denise, thank you so much for your thoughtful comments. And Kay, I know you pull up the rear. Well, we may not have a rear, so let's just hold on for a minute. And then we can tie it all up.
Ms. Kay, is there a Pacific coalition that you were telling that you wanted for me to look up?
Well, see, you know what? Some of the old established coalitions are just that, old and established. And sometimes if you have just one resource that you can make available, Trina mentioned, we always wind up with the crumbs. Well, if you have a crumb that you can offer to bring folks to the table, to have discussions around what's happening, what the resources are, then if your Black coalition or any other coalition is not working, is not active, then it can be worked. But you could start with 2 or 3 organizations and just bring them to the table to begin to have discussions around resources that are available or that you would like to see happen in Charleston. It only takes two. And, start with your United Way and, a couple of community-based organizations. So you have what exists that are functioning. Go to those executive directors. Ask them what are some of the concerns. You'll hear the same stories, and then if you sit down with those folks, then you can begin to attract what it is that you need for your individual program and then for the community itself. So somebody has to bring folks to the table. If that's what you need to do, I know you're doing your program, your organization, but if the resources aren't there, then you need to be able to have those folks sitting around the table. You be the driver of that vehicle. You bring those folks into your car and drive them where you need them to go, so that that there's leadership. Sometimes we just can't wait for those folks that are dormant. Folks do get burnt out. We do. We get burnt out, but then we come back. Yes. We come back when we're reinvigorated and energized because someone like yourself says, this is what I'm doing, this is what I need. Trina, has just totally brought me out of, my little cocoon that I was like, I'm done, I'm finished. But I'm so excited and wanting to do more and wanting to do something. So if you can begin to identify in Charleston, 2 or 3 programs, organizations that are serving the community, and see what the similarities are, see what the differences are, see what the needs are, and then begin to have those conversations. And believe me, it can be very powerful. It can be so powerful that the powers that be come to the table and then try to take over your stuff. Okay, that's when you know your stuff is working.
Yes. Thank you for that, because just like when you brought up the coalition, we have a kids coalition that I'm seeing now, Charleston Kids Coalition, but a golf one, and we have a Christian one, and that's it, that I see. Really, Sparkle Coalition, but just like what I thought, they do not have the resources here. There's so much work here to do. I mean, and it's exciting, but but it's just a whole lot, and and I have to get to the point where, just like you say, bring them to the table and let's discuss and let's make it all. Find out the resources, find out what they're doing, what each individual organizations are doing, so we can pull together. And like I said, many. It's just a unique way that they're operating here in Charleston, and it's crazy. It's crazy. They're doing a lot of stuff for a lot of nothing. I would say that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? But it is our responsibility to make sure the right people know what we do. So I had sent you a little quick text while you were talking. I'm like, see, that very first packet I sent out had this is what I sent to each of the extensions of PMOSH. I sent the mayor's name, email, and phone number. You don't really need anything more than that. But, hi, baby. You don't need anything more than that, really. But in addition to sending the mayor's name and his phone number and email, I sent his secretary's name and email. I sent every city council member I can find phone number and email. And not only did I do that, but I took all the email addresses and put them together with commas. So all you had to do was copy and paste them and send them just a basic email. So part of that is me knowing how I market and me knowing who the players are without knowing all of the players. You won't know all the players until you get the main players, which is the city. That's the mayor. And if we're doing tutorial or mentoring or young people, then we have to have the superintendent, his secretary. You see what I mean? We have to have those people to send our information to. And so, yeah, that is wonderful.
Hi, this is James.
And we're off to a running start. We are really off to a running start. So all of you from Atlanta to Boston to Charleston to Charlotte to New Haven to Phoenix to Maryland, we are on the right track. Everything is okay in divine God's order, and we're going to be all right. But we just need to keep sharing information and not being afraid to share it. Like, what good is it if you get something that you could benefit from and you don't share it with anyone else? That's our problem. It's us four and no more. It's us four and no more. So can we at least agree to share the information?
Yes.
Can we at least agree to do that? And I think we'll be off to a running start. So some of them are jumping back on now. Thank you.
Hey.
I don't know what happened. I think we had a glitch in the matrix. Yes.
Oh, wow.
No, it sounded like you had said
glad to have you back.
And I'm like, okay.
All
right, cool.
I thought everybody hung up.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, okay.
Oh,
good night.
wow. So we about to close.
Okay. So, again, I don't know how many of you all had some great takeaways, but I think we've had quite a few. Like, we've really been enlightened. And if Kay, if you want to close us out, that'd be great. It's about almost 11 o'clock. We've got about 9 minutes before the clock strikes 11. And I think this has been a very meaty conversation that obviously needs to continue and obviously needs to be operationalized. However, I think we have I am thrilled. I am thrilled. I've learned a lot. I really have. And I thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it's a sacrifice. There is only a certain kind of person who could be on a phone, on a line with people from all over the country that they've never met from 9:30 to 11 o'clock on a Thursday evening. So Godspeed to anyone that God has chosen to do this. So we already know that we're all special. So now what do we do? So, Kay, you can lead us home, and we'll follow up tomorrow.
Amen. Again, we thank each and every one that was on this line tonight and sharing their information. And, Lord, we're just so grateful to be able to leave here tonight with some information that we can take back to our respective organizations. And thank you, Mr. Hills, for sharing with us your wisdom. We're so grateful to you. Again, it is a sacrifice of time, but that's what it takes in order for any of us to be able to do God's will. It's always sacrifice. And so, again, thank you for giving us your time. We all are privileged here on this phone call this evening. Thank you. As we leave tonight, take with you everything that was shared. Whether you agreed or disagreed, take from it what you will and use it in our community, because at this point in time, our community is hurting. Our communities are in much need of the resources that we know are available to us, but we need to be able to get to them. And we are the vehicles that God has chosen to be able to get those resources to our folks. So again, as we do our work for the next 5, 6, 7 days and come back to this line, remember that it is our work through God's will that it will get done. Thank you all for being here, and thank God for allowing us. Ms. Trina, your vision, always grateful to you, your leadership, Love you. Love each and every one of you that are on this call tonight. God bless you. Always.
Received. Amen.
Received.
This call is
Amen.
adjourned.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.